everyone. Thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at.
There continues to be a lot of confusion and a ton of misinformation about what's going to happen on May 7th.
That's when ID restrictions get tighter for domestic flights. Illinois Secretary of State Alexi Giannoulias on the Real ID rollout and more. How could local business owners be affected by the Chicago office of the U.S. Small Business Administration leaving town?
Pizza! Chicago's famous for its deep dish pies. Inches.
And in the latest from WTTW News explains a look at Chicago's most iconic foods. And now to some of today's top stories. Records show Chicago police opened fire on a 58-year-old Chicago man 16 times as he walked toward them carrying a knife. While we won't show the moment of the shooting, be aware we are about to see footage of the incident.
Chicago police.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Nothing.
Okay, so just after that verbal exchange, body cam video shows two police officers shot and killed 58-year-old Timothy Glaze during the early morning hours of January 3rd at a senior apartment building south of Douglas Park. Records obtained by WTTW News show Glaze suffered wounds to his chest, abdomen, torso, and other body parts. Glaze's partner, Charlotta Pritchett, says she called police because he was carrying a knife and refusing to leave her apartment. Yet she tells WTTW News that she regrets calling 911. She says he was suffering several forms of cancer, and a statement from his family says he was in a state of mental distress. For more on this investigation, please visit our website. A record-setting verdict for two men wrongfully convicted of murder. A federal jury today awarded $60 million each to John Fulton and Anthony Mitchell, who were 18 and 17 years old when they were arrested in connection with a March 2003 murder. They were convicted of first-degree murder and kidnapping and sentenced to 31 years behind bars. In 2019, a judge overturned their convictions and ordered a new trial, prompting prosecutors to drop the charges. A city law department spokesperson vowed to appeal the verdict. Despite a brief rally this afternoon, all three major stock market indexes closed out the day in the red. The Dow and the S&P closed today down by 2 and 2.7% respectively, the worst day of the year for both indexes. And the tech-heavy NASDAQ down 4%, its biggest single-day decline since September 2022. The widespread sell-off was mostly driven by anxiety about the impact of tariffs imposed by the Trump administration and fears of recession. Up next, one-on-one with Illinois' Secretary of State, right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Jin and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
After being extended multiple times, the deadline for needing a real ID to travel domestically seems to be really approaching this time. Some parts of the country, like South Florida, have actually seen people camping out overnight in DMV parking lots to ensure they get an appointment for a real ID. Though nothing like that has happened in Illinois. A surging demand has led to longer lines at the DMV, but not everyone needs a real ID. So here with a reality check on the Real ID rollout and more is Alexi Giannoulias, Illinois Secretary of State. Welcome. Good to have you, Mr. Secretary.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So Real ID requirement set to take effect, as we've heard you say, on May 7th. Explain for us what the Real ID is, who needs it, and how it differs from the standard state driver's license or state ID.
So the Real ID is a federally mandated identification process. It is not the Secretary of State's office. It's not from the state of Illinois. That being said, we're tasked with dealing with it. What we've seen, and this was passed after 9/11 to try and create a uniform system of identification, is that over the last couple months there has been unprecedented demand. You mentioned what's happening in Florida and other states. People are sleeping in their cars, they're sleeping in tents outside of DMVs. all of a sudden, because of this deadline, which has been kicked continuously, unfortunately, we're seeing demand the likes of which we've never seen. Appointments are being gobbled up. Lines at our walk-in facilities are exploding. So we've been really focused on helping meet this demand to the extent we can. We've opened up Saturday hours. We've opened up an extra 2,500 appointments a day. We continue to let people know through our portal that most likely folks do not need a real ID. If you have a passport, you can still travel. The other point that we're trying to make is even after May 7th, we will continue to issue real IDs. So we're not ceasing operations on May 7th. This will happen all summer. It will happen essentially forever. So if you go to our website, we're really trying hard to educate people on who needs real ID, what it does, and the fact that there's a strong chance you don't need it.
Strong chance you don't need it if you have a passport. And of course, if you have a driver's license and you just plan on driving and flying with your passport, then you don't need it.
The other issue that we're seeing, which is more, talking to other states, because of the new administration in Washington, D.C., we've seen a tremendous uptick in folks who are worried that if they don't have a real ID, they do not have a proper form of identification. They're worried that, falsely, that they'll be deported, that they will be sent away, that they'll have issues identifying themselves. We also have folks who think that their driver's license is no longer valid if they don't have a real ID. So that is not the case. If you have a valid driver's license, you can drive a vehicle. If you have a valid state ID, that is proper identification. So a lot of our job is we're spending a lot of time making sure that we educate folks on exactly what the real ID does and doesn't do.
And we know the real ID deadline, it has been extended, moved, pushed back multiple times, but you know that this one it's a hard deadline. It's not moving.
Well,
anything can change, but
it could be a hard deadline. They're saying it is. I also think that they're not going to enforce this right away. From what we're being told by Homeland Security and TSA, this will probably be essentially a 2-year enforcement period. In other words, if you go on May 8th and you don't have a real ID, and you don't have a passport with you, it's highly unlikely, we're being told by the federal government, that they will actually kick you off the plane or not allow you to board. Most likely, you'll get a warning, because the percentage of folks who have a real ID are still so small. It would be shocking if they didn't allow folks on planes.
You've named a few steps that your office has taken to make sure that residents in Illinois can have a smooth transition with extending hours and adding appointments. But so folks know, this is not something that you can do online. There are many things that we can do at your website, but this is not one of them.
Great point. So since taking office, we've been laser focused on customer service, on modernizing the office. However, because this is a federally mandated identification system, we are not able to do it online. The requirements and documents that people need to bring in are also elevated because it's a federal program. So, we're really encouraging folks to go to our website to make sure they have the proper documentation. If it was up to us, we'd do it all online. We've moved a lot of our programs, a lot of our mandates online. I'm proud of the modernization efforts we've had. Unfortunately, again, because this is a federal mandate, we don't have the ability to do that.
Something that you are working on making digital, though, is that making it possible that some Illinois residents will be able to have digital IDs by the end of the year. Tell us about that. Which ones and how is that possible?
Well, this is the part that I'm excited about. Again, back to the modernization point, we've been laser focused on bringing more innovative ideas to the Secretary of State's office. Digital IDs, digital driver's license, which are already happening in other states. Our goal is to get them done before the end of the year. The technology is really incredible, and let's be honest, the whole world is moving that way. If you go to a Bulls game, your ticket's on your phone. If you go to the movies, your ticket's normally on your phone. So we're moving towards that technology. I'm excited about it. We have signed a contract with Apple to include driver's license on Apple wallets. So the technology is great, and I'm really excited about this.
And I'm guessing this means I have to blend these two questions. I can't get my real ID. That would not be digital, would it? Or would it?
Not yet.
Not
correct.
yet. Okay. It sounds convenient, of course, but there's obviously the concern about cybercrimes, online scams. How would your office ensure that Illinois residents who have a digital ID are protected from that?
A great question. So cybersecurity and data protection are paramount to every single thing we do. The safeguards that are in place are actually very impressive, and I will tell you that it's safer to have something on your phone. You're less likely to get pickpocketed or have someone steal your ID. The technology is really remarkable. In the states that have implemented a mobile driver's license, there's been essentially zero instance of cyber crimes or any hacking of the system.
A lot of viewers may not know that you're also the state's chief librarian, and you spearheaded a first-of-its-kind law that would penalize libraries that banned or removed material for political reasons. That was signed into law, of course, in 2023. A couple dozen school district libraries have actually opted out of receiving state grants. What do you make of that?
It's upsetting. I will tell you that I take my job as a state librarian very, very serious. It's the honor of my life to be the state librarian. And I've always believed in the freedom of speech, the freedom to learn, and what's happening in our country with this dangerous attack on the freedom to learn and these book bans that we're seeing where, you know, a few extremists can determine what an entire library district can read is baffling to me. I'm very proud that we led the effort to be the first state in America to ban book bans. We will continue to fight for libraries, library staff, our librarians. I'm proud of our bill, I'm proud of our libraries, and we need to let librarians do their job. And again, the entire purpose of education is to teach young men and women how to learn for themselves. And our bill, we feel, is a very strong step in that direction.
Can't let you go without asking this. 80-year-old Senator Dick Durbin has yet to confirm whether or not he is going to run again for his seat in 2026. There's speculation, and speculation abounds, about Governor Pritzker potentially running for president. Chicago's mayor is grappling with record low approval ratings. Any of those other positions? I know this is the honor of your lifetime, as you have said, but any of those positions pique your interest, Secretary?
I truly, truly love my job. Being Secretary of State's great. You know, we've modernized the office. As the state librarian, we've done more with that department. We also have a securities division. So we're relentlessly driven on making this the best Secretary of State's office in the country. I'm a big believer in administrative competency, data-driven decisions. We measure our call times by the seconds. We look at our appointment-only system, which we implemented. We had a bill that makes sure that women who come into abortion don't get tracked by ICE. We got rid of the TVDL marker. So we've been able to create an efficient office and modernize it, but also have an aggressive legislative agenda. So I'm proud of the work we've done, and I remain focused halfway through my term on really being a great Secretary of State.
All right, Illinois Secretary of State Alexi Giannoulias, thank you for joining us.
Honored to be here.
Up next, how efforts to punish Illinois could affect business owners. Stay with us. The U.S. Small Business Administration is pulling up stakes in Chicago and 5 other cities, citing their status as sanctuary cities. The agency is tasked with offering resources to small business owners. It claims the cities it's leaving don't comply with federal immigration authorities. However, Chicago does honor judicial warrants obtained by federal officials, and the SBA is now requiring that loan applicants verify their citizenship status. Joining us to discuss more are Jessica Walks First, the executive chef and owner of Kitapanen Kitchen, and on Zoom, clinical professor of economics at DePaul University and also small business owner Brian Thompson. Thanks to you both for joining us. Brian, I want to start with you first. In a statement, the U.S. Small Business Administration said, quote, "The SBA is putting American citizens first by serving legal eligible business owners in partnership with cities that share this administration's commitment to secure borders. In the coming months, the SBA will relocate its Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, Denver, New York City, and Seattle regional offices out of sanctuary cities and into more accessible communities that comply with federal immigration law. Brian, what is your reaction to that messaging?
Sure. I mean, on the surface level, it definitely sounds punitive. I tend to, focus on the business perspective, and I think the business perspective is that very similar to what I teach in class is that businesses need to be strategic, and what it means to be strategic is what you do given the environment. And it's very clear that the environment has changed. It's changing, and so it is up to businesses to adjust and adapt to this environment that they're now inheriting.
What economic impact do small businesses have on their local communities?
Oh, I mean, small businesses are the fiber of a community. Every big business was a small business at some point. And so to say that, we're moving resources away we're making it more difficult to access resources for small businesses is challenged. And so I think that, when we shop at small businesses, we're not only helping the businesses family directly, but we're also helping the community. And I think that's really important.
Jessica, you own a catering company. What has your experience been like getting started?
It was difficult. We had the SBA, but I don't feel like I got enough help there. And, as I went through opening my business, I really felt like I was at a disadvantage because there's really not enough resources for small businesses, especially businesses of color. I had to do a lot of figuring things out on my own, and my greatest support came from my community and other small businesses. And it was like a community effort is what actually helped me launch.
This news is also coming at a time when a lot of people are sort of using their own pocketbooks to make a statement and removing their dollars from major mega corporations and being more intentional with who they're supporting. How can people be more supportive of local businesses?
By supporting the small businesses, obviously. I mean, I do my best to support small businesses. I mean, a lot of the things I buy come from small businesses. I try to stay away from all the big retailers because what people don't see is those small businesses are what Chicago was built on. It's what I remember growing up. They're connection and communities, and they're important. And if they go away, what do we have left? It creates a big disconnect, but it also harms families and communities.
So Andersonville is one of many Chicago communities known for thriving small businesses. Their local Chamber of Commerce provided us a statement in reaction to the SBA leaving the city. It reads, quote, "The SBA's decision to withdraw from Chicago and other major metropolitan areas does not serve the best interests of small business owners. It creates unnecessary barriers to accessing critical resources that help businesses start, expand, and thrive. Linking the closure of these offices to Chicago's status as a sanctuary city is unfathomable." It goes on to say it's unfathomable, and immigrant-owned businesses are an integral part of our local economy. The Andersonville Chamber of Commerce remains dedicated to advocating for small businesses and ensuring they have the tools and support they need to succeed. Brian Thompson, I'm going to come back to you. What alternative resources should local and state governments be expanding to fill the gap left by the SBA?
Sure. I think that education is really important. I'm somewhat biased in that perspective, but I do think education is very important because in terms of delivering value to the community and serving the constituents that they have, businesses need to know how things are changing, how the environment's changing in terms of technology, and understanding what consumers want, and better connected to financing and resources that are available. And a lot of those voids are filled by small business and small business-like community resources like the SBA. And so I do think that at the end of the day, I think it's going to create an opportunity. Someone's going to fill this void because that's how businesses create new opportunities, is by filling voids.
Jessica, same question to you. What alternative resources would you like to see? Could you use from local and state agencies?
I could be here all day with a list, but I mean, honestly, the SBA was there, but I mean, like I said, I found no resources when it came to helping look for funding or grants or anything to help me launch my business. There were no resources. There were no education resources, and education is important. Like the programs I use came from my community through California Indian Manpower Consortium, Trickster Cultural Center, the American Indian Center. Those were where I got help trying to launch my business because I couldn't find programs to help me. And I think, you know, I've seen other people struggle with the same thing. Like, where do we go? Where are the resources? Even identifying resources is hard. You know, everything I did with the grace of God and with the help of my community. And that's the only reason my business began to thrive, is because I had a strong community behind me. But I definitely think that we need lots of resources and, you know, general information. Like, I didn't even know what licenses I needed to start. Where do you find that information? Where do you go? What do you need to be a legal business? Like, we really need a lot of education behind starting a business, and then more helping fund businesses and supporting, you know, helping business become financially sound so they can thrive in the communities.
Brian Thompson, do we have an idea of the financial and economic impact of small businesses on Chicago or any their local community? I know we talked about how important they are, but what about that impact?
I mean, the best way to think, I was recently did an interview on the radio, and one of the panelists had used the term kind consumption. And it really gets to the core idea about like our choices as consumers. And so when you choose to shop at the small business, you are not only, you know, helping that family's business grow, but you're helping them create jobs for their local community. And, you know, if those jobs are not available, then it starts to affect the community. It certainly affects the commercial real estate, and then eventually it affects the residential real estate. And so I think that it's absolutely paramount that, you know, businesses have access to resources, and that we as consumers work to support these businesses.
All right, that's where we'll have to leave it. My thanks to Brian Thompson at DePaul and Jessica Walks First for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Coming up, we take a bite out of Chicago history, but first, a look at the weather. Chicago is famous for a lot of things. Architecture, at the moment, losing sports teams, and of course, food. Tonight, in the latest installment of our Emmy and Alyssa Gore award-winning series, WTTW News Explains, our Amanda Venicky sets out to give us a course, a main course in fact, on Chicago's famous foods.
Chicago is home to a plate full of iconic foods. The Italian beef sandwich was born here in the early 20th century. Gyros were introduced to America in Chicago during the mid-60s. As for dessert, the brownies said to have been invented at the Palmer House Hotel in 1893. But more than anything else, Chicago is known for its hot dogs and its pizza. In the late 18 and early 1900s, Chicago was butcher to the world. The stockyards were humming along. Needless to say, meat scraps were plentiful, as were Frankfurt-loving German immigrants in need of cheap eats. Enter the Chicago-style hot dog. Of course, this isn't just any dog. A true Chicago dog must be all beef, nestled in a steamed poppy seed bun, and dragged through the garden. Chicago's 7 standard toppings come from around the world and represent our immigrant roots. The poppy seed bun is here via Poland. The hot dog itself, the pickle spear, and mustard have Jewish and German roots. Diced white onions and sliced tomatoes, that's Italy and maybe Greece. The relish hails from England, although the unnatural neon color is all ours. Sports peppers wrap the deep south and/or Mexico. And as one of the country's biggest celery producers at the time, Chicago's Lakeview community contributed the sprinkling of celery salt. Lore has it, vendors added so many toppings to the dog so it could serve as a meal on a bun for broke Chicagoans during the Depression. Still hungry? Feast on another Chicago staple, pizza! Chicago's famous for its deep dish pies, inches of pan-baked crust and oozing cheese covered in tangy tomato sauce and toppings, a creation largely credited to what is now Chicago's Pizzeria Uno in 1943. But locals know the real deal is thin crust, really thin. Also known as tavern style because it originated as a go-to treat in Chicago bars. After Prohibition was lifted, taverns encouraged customers to stay a while and drink more beer by offering snack-sized squares of cracker-thin pizza, often for free. The thin crust kept the pizza fast and cheap to make. The squares could be easily served on napkins, and the small slices wouldn't spoil supper. Unlike our hot dog, there aren't many rules around tavern-style pizza. Get it as thin as possible, slice it in squares, and top it with anything you like. I recommend Jardiniere, though Chicago pizza makers say sausage is the most popular. If you're still hungry, we can dish on other local delicacies courtesy of Chicago Innovation, like the Pizza Puff, the Burrito, the Maxwell Street Polish, Saganaki.
So much to eat. You can see more from WTTW News Explains on our website. And that's our show for this Monday night. Be sure to sign up for our free email newsletter, The Daily Chicagoan, at WTTW.com/newsletter. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. On the 5th anniversary of the WHO declaring a COVID-19 pandemic, we devoted the entire program to the subject. A look at what we've learned and whether we're ready for the next pandemic. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to give back to its community in Chicago and beyond.